Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Southern Fried Podcast, a production of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I'm Rex Nelson from the Democrat Gazette, and happy to have a longtime acquaintance and friend along, Gabe Holmstrom, this morning. He is the executive director of the Downtown Little Rock Partnership. We tape this at the Democrat Gazette offices in downtown Little Rock. So, Gabe, you didn't have far to go for this assignment.
No, I'd gladly take that block and a half walk over here.
Thank you for joining us. So much to talk about, and I thought today that we would start kind of big picture. I mean, we hopefully are coming out now, but we have been in a pandemic, obviously, since March of 2020, and we have read stories all over America as downtowns have taken a hit, as people no longer came to downtowns of cities across America to work. That affected the restaurants downtown, the bars downtown. Business travel stopped, which affected, obviously, downtown hotels. So it's not obviously limited to Little Rock, but I understand that this pandemic has really been rough on downtown sectors all over America.
Absolutely. So, with my kind of throwaway line is, every line of work has an association. And so I'm a member of the International Downtown Association. Mm-hmm. And a couple of weeks ago, my colleagues from across North America gathered at our annual conference in Tampa and talked about these very issues. And you're absolutely right. This is not independent of Little Rock. Cities and downtowns all across North America and the world saw these challenges. The very things you hit on, the decline of business travel, then, tourism and the convention business. But then along the way, what downtowns look like shifted and is likely going to be a permanent shift as businesses and companies saw that they didn't necessarily have to have these massive physical office spaces in order to conduct their work. So, what that evolves into and how when people start coming back to the offices. I know just last week we had large employers in Little Rock, and just this month they were requiring people to come back to the office for the first time since March of 2020. That's substantial.
That's a long time. I would hate to be, for instance, a downtown restaurant owner that depends on lunch trade largely, trying to hang on through that. And those types of people have been, I think, amazingly resilient. I would have thought we would have seen a lot more closed than we have seen closed.
I think you're absolutely right. And, one of the things that we've talked about a lot, and you especially, is how Little Rock in particular, Arkansas as a whole, but then Little Rock in particular, kind of hits above our weight when it comes to the diversity of the food offerings and the restaurants that we have. And that's particularly true in downtown as well. But by and large, the vast majority of the places that have made it, those are the places that we're proud of, that we talk about, that we take people to. The places that didn't make it, maybe they weren't going to make it anyways, and that was just what pushed them over. But it's been interesting to see the new words like pivot. Have we ever used the word pivot so many times?
Exactly.
We're not talking about a basketball game as we have in the past 18 months.
This pandemic has thrown so many curveballs at all of us now. I tend to be pretty optimistic now. I know experts, like I was listening to an interview with Scott Gottlieb, former head of the FDA, who said, look, we're seeing another little surge right now, but people are getting boosters now. We're probably about to get an oral pill that's highly effective that we're going to get a treatment for. He sounded optimistic. And so as I bring that back, as we come out of this, hopefully for good in 2022, are you a glass half full or empty guy about the future of downtown Little Rock specifically?
That's a great question. By nature, I'm a glass half full kind of guy.
Yeah.
And then, by occupation, I am too. So,
but you also have to deal with the reality on the ground in your job.
Absolutely. And I'm a realist. And I know there's only so much cheerleading that I can do without seeing other people jump in and then action being taken. I think it's interesting timing with the highway construction project that as we start to come out of the pandemic, the massive amount of this construction has occurred. People are able to see what sections of the River Market in downtown look like when you don't have a gigantic off-ramp in the middle of it. So seeing how that concept is going to work, how that space is going to be reimagined, seeing the convention traffic start to kick up, business tourism is coming back. The restaurants are open again, and they're seeing record level business and very positive reaction from the community and travelers as well. I have to be optimistic about it, and genuinely I am. Now, on the same token, you have to be a realist. It's going to take more than optimism and hope. It's going to take people investing. And one of the things a large investment has been made is with the Art Center. So coming into 2022, we're going to have the reopening of the Art Center under the new name, of course.
Right. Museum of Fine Arts.
Museum of Fine Arts. I got to stop saying Art Center.
I do too. It's been a lifetime of saying that, so it's hard. The Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. I'll keep repeating that.
AMFA. That's right. So what you saw in other places where there's been a significant investment, there's been a ripple effect around that. What is going to be that impact in the MacArthur Park area? You're seeing a lot of growth, a lot of new construction in Petaway, in a residential neighborhood just adjacent to Soma, south of 630, where you're seeing empty lots that are having brand new homes being built on them, and people purchasing those and moving in, and communities being built and families moving in there.
Yeah. Obviously, I work downtown. I'm a fan of downtown. As you know, I write about downtown Little Rock, even though I have a statewide audience, because I think the state's largest city must have a successful downtown. I think that's a benefit to the whole state. But I'm glad you mentioned the Museum of Fine Arts, because one point I have made when people, will just say things like, well, we hadn't seen any investment between what they have raised for the Museum of Fine Arts, and then we go back just a few years to the spectacular renovation of the Robinson Center. Between those two, Gabe, that's about $200 million for the arts and performing arts, obviously, with Robinson, other kinds of arts at the Museum of Fine Arts. That's a pretty awe-inspiring investment when you put those two together downtown.
You're absolutely correct. So I'm very curious and optimistic about the additional draw that the reimagined museum will be for this area. And then now that we're able to have events and shows and musicals and concerts, what are the types of things that Robinson is going to program for and attract people to come to downtown Little Rock and spend their recreational dollars here? The other piece of that is, how are these office buildings going to be repurposed? You're seeing, from a population trend standpoint, you're seeing people are still wanting to live in downtown Little Rock, and you're seeing people moving to downtown for the amenities that are offered here, whether it's walkability or having the urban lifestyle. Because really, in the state of Arkansas, this is the only place that you're going to get remotely close to an urban lifestyle, that you see in television or in other cities.
A true urban lifestyle. And I wanted to get to that. You hit on my next question, and that is the towers, if you will, downtown, the things that really define the Little Rock skyline. A lot of coverage in this paper and other media outlets just in recent weeks, lawsuits, foreclosures, for sale. I'm talking the Regents Tower. I'm talking the Bank of America building. Talk a little bit about what you see the future there and what kind of re-envisioning you really think needs to take place with those buildings, again, that define the Little Rock skyline.
You're absolutely right, Rex. I think it's going to take an investment and a desire of the ownership groups of those buildings to want to be a participant in that investment. One of the things, when you look back 40 years ago, although these buildings were all owned locally, where we are now is they're not. They're out-of-state real estate investment groups or REITs or that, what have you, that they don't have a vested interest in their community.
Correct.
And in the capital city. I don't know if that's going to change, but what I do know is the massive banking lobbies of the 60s and 70s and 80s, that's gone.
Everybody's using online banking. Exactly.
It's not coming back, but you still have these amazing spaces on the ground floor of these towers. How can they be reimagined? How can a restaurant go in there? And then when you combine the empty or the available office space in the upper floors of the towers, can that be reimagined as residential? Because you're still having a desire of people who want to live downtown, but is there a way to set that up in a price point that's palatable within a restaurant on the ground floor that will cater to them for lunch, for dinner, for a cocktail hour, happy hour?
I think it's just crucial to the future of downtown that you not have those towers sitting half empty. It sends the wrong message to other potential investors.
You're absolutely correct. But again, like when you opened the podcast up, we're not alone in this. You know, I talked to a gentleman from Detroit who's, working on an issue that I don't know where it's going to go, but an issue on the federal level about a office conversion tax credit that would be mirrored on the historic rehabilitation tax credit, where you could take one of those towers and then there would be an incentive there to transition them from office use to residential use, which then brings more people to the downtown, creates and increases density, and then creates potential customers for the restaurants and the additional retail shops that we want to see in downtown.
One success, and this is right around the corner from where we're taping, but has certainly been the success of the Little Rock Tech Park, which, as we know, after a long, drawn-out process that caused hurt feelings and controversy and everything else, wound up downtown, and the work of the Venture Center, which is headquartered there and has become kind of the leader for accelerators, as they call them, for financial technology around the country, bringing a lot of people to downtown Little Rock. They went mostly virtual, but they're coming back to bringing people in again. You have to believe that some of that are going to lead to some startups, and I know your hope is that those startups will grow and that they'll call downtown their headquarters.
Absolutely, and the reason that they go to the tech park is to surround themselves with like-minded individuals, and there is a functional workspace there. Not to mention a great coffee shop in the ground floor, and it's walkable to other restaurants. It's walkable to happy hour, and it's walkable to places where they can live. So as those companies continue to locate there and grow, it absolutely is my hope that they will stay in downtown. And I think a lot of them have. The good news is as that occurs, there's now available office space to be filled at rates that can be negotiated and that are affordable for those young companies to place a foothold in downtown Little Rock and hopefully maintain their home for a long time. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because you take the success of the tech park, which was a combination of a local estate effort, but then you look at really what the damage that the state of Arkansas has done to downtown Little Rock.
Again, my next question. I'm
not even reading your notes.
State government leaves, and I was going to say, as you said earlier, part of your job is to be a cheerleader from downtown, but you've also got to be a realist. And as state government has largely abandoned downtown Little Rock with its state government offices, I know that has been a huge blow to the number of workers that we have down here.
It had, because that impacts the number of people eating lunches, the number of people that are requiring for office space, and then not to mention parking revenue. So again, it is what it is. They had a building that they needed to fill, and I understand that those decisions had to be made, but it's highly unfortunate that so many of the state workers were moved from downtown Little Rock, and I don't know that we're ever going to get them back.
So again, we're going to have to reimagine. Part of that's going to have to go to housing. Part of that, again, to private sectors, maybe startups that we were talking about. I mentioned housing. Let's dig down a little deeper there. We saw over recent decades, I look to the River Market and I see the work that, Jimmy Moses and Rhett Tucker, groundbreaking work did down there that kind of made living downtown cool again. I know there's some buildings being looked at, work for the first time in many years on the old Veterans Hospital. The same guy who's an out-of-state investor considering maybe the AT&T building on Capitol Avenue for housing. Again, do you see that trend accelerating and not being just in the River Market, but maybe moving up Capitol Avenue and moving up Main Street?
We've talked about Capitol Avenue a lot, and I think that is a key section of our downtown that really needs some focus. And so what is going to be that banner project that turns into the catalyst for shifting the appearance and the functionality and the use of Capitol Avenue? Because going back to those bank lobbies are located right there on Capitol Avenue.
They are right on the street.
And if you had the hot new happy hour place right there, or at a great new restaurant, how does that change how that area is viewed? Is it the old AT&T building? How is that going to be reimagined? But I think those are opportunities. I mean, with these challenges come opportunities. The old VA hospital, that's 420,000 square feet. And the gentleman who purchased it intends to turn it into market rate apartments.
Right.
I don't know when the last time is you've been over there, but
I haven't been by in a long time.
Once you go out there and you see it, I've never been up top, but just being there, you can see you're on top of a hill. So you have a great view of downtown Little Rock. You have a great view for miles and miles. So he really has something special there, and he's got a track record of success of doing that in these larger scale projects. So I think that's going to be fascinating to see unfold. And again, when that's successful, that's just going to increase the density and the number of people. I mean, you drive through Soma on a Saturday and a Sunday, and it's nothing but people walking around. The available retail space in that area is minimal. So that's why they went in and they just did the big in the 1400 block of Main, where you have the new waffle place, and they've got apartments on the upper floors. It shows that people want to be down there. AMR moved their offices from the River Market to Soma.
Back to Capitol Avenue again, because it's a street I walk real often. We're at the corner of Capitol and Scott right now. Right before the pandemic, and I wrote about it. We had the kind of historic restoration that I just loved when the AC Hotel opened, very hip urban brand. Luckily, their timing was unfortunate, but they've survived through the pandemic. They're open. I know there's a developer in Hot Springs that's looking to redo the old Legacy Hotel down the street. But you look at that AC, and that's kind of, again, in my mind, I mean, I'm an old guy. I'm over 60, but what I call a hip urban brand that you need along Capitol Avenue to spur that forward.
No, I think you're right, and that's a wonderful step in the right direction. But what's coming next? We haven't even talked about the two elephants in downtown, if you will, is the Boyle Building and the Donaghy Building.
The two tallest buildings on Main Street are empty. Yeah,
that's right. And
we can't declare a success as long as your two tallest buildings on your street named Main Street are empty.
That's correct. But you start peeling back the layers, and so why is that? It doesn't happen often, but every couple months I will get a call from a regional or a national developer, and I start talking with them about what's available, or they've identified those two buildings are always topics of discussion when they call. Here's the fascinating thing is that especially the guys that have worked all across the country, they start asking me about the different incentive programs that we have, and they say, well, do you have this? No. Do you have property tax abatement? No. What about this? No. What about sales tax abatement? No. So all of these programs that they've worked with in other communities and other states that they're familiar with, we don't have. And why? It's one of the things when you talk to the policymakers, maybe they don't have a particular understanding of this, or maybe they just see it as a developer giveaway. But when you go to these other communities in these other states and you see the success, it's really hard to argue when there isn't a building left to be renovated as compared to having boarded up buildings.
That's a great point. As we attract not only capital and investment downtown, but people back back downtown. I want to make sure we don't run out of time until I hit on this, and that's the area of public safety. You and I both know, we've both worked in politics, and the old political saying, perception is reality. And in many ways it is. I think back on my late parents who lived an hour away in Arkadelphia. They knew I worked in downtown Little Rock and perceived it to be a dangerous place. I've lived in Little Rock now for 32 straight years. I've never had a problem, knock on wood. But they perceived it to be a dangerous place. And as downtown Little Rock needs to be a place where people come from all over the state to go to a show at Robinson or go to the Museum of Fine Arts when it reopens or have a great meal out. That's something that has to be dealt with. Where do we go here? Do we need, for instance, more Little Rock police officers? You know, we talk about community policing, walking beats, for instance. You've got the ambassadors program. Do you need more of those? Talk a little bit about public safety and the public perception of that as it relates to downtown Little Rock.
So you said it, perception is reality. And here we are in 2021, almost 2022, and we're still battling the stereotypes and the stigma, of that HBO special, from the 80s, from the 90s, or whenever
1993, I think, right after Bill Clinton went into office.
So it's stunning. The reality is as you just alluded to, downtown safe. How do we change the perception? I think increasing the ambassador program is going to be a substantial way to do that.
And then again, for those not familiar, to tell them what that is. Those people that you employ that basically walk the streets.
That's it. They're an additional set of eyes and ears. They are in direct communication with LRPD. They can walk somebody to their car, and they're a presence. They can talk to panhandlers if they become too aggressive. And they report when they see if there's a pothole or graffiti. We remove that. But at 1.5 and 2 ambassadors, that's a big downtown. That's not enough to move the needle. But that's going to take a substantial investment in manpower to create that. I don't know how we get there, but I think that's going to be one piece of the puzzle. The other thing is just be relentless, continuing to bring people downtown and show them you can have a positive experience here. You will have a positive experience here, but it is a tricky thing. So when people travel and they go to another city and they experience, whether it be a panhandling situation or something that leaves a negative impact, it's easy for them to dismiss it as, oh, we're in a big city. It's fascinating the difference when they're close to home, how they just get angry and frustrated. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to fix that, but it's one of the things I see and I hear it all the time. But I do think ambassador programs, working with LRPD, continuing the police presence, continuing the ambassador presence, and just having more people downtown. I mean, the increase of density of people goes a long way to address a lot of these things.
Your organization does a lot of events, and I know part of that is to get people downtown, see what it has to offer. Again, like you said, get used to and comfortable with being downtown. Talk about some of the events you do on an annual basis.
Well, I don't know about annual, but we're really getting ready to kick that off again. It was one of the fascinating impacts of the pandemic for us is what do we do since we can't do these large scale events? The week the world shut down on that Friday, that Tuesday, I was supposed to have our annual meeting with 800 people gathered at the State House Convention Center, and we obviously could not do that, and that just began a whole slate of cancellations. But back to the events, we do a wide variety of things. This kicked off, we just had the 10th annual Main Street Food Truck Festival. So, going back 10 years ago, my predecessor, Sharon Priest, developed the concept of this event with the Main Street Revitalization Task Force. And at that time, it's important to remember, there were no restaurants on Main Street.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
They wanted to do something to bring people to downtown on the weekends, because you have all the people that come here to work during the week, but then they would leave on the weekends. So they came up with the concept of the Food Truck Festival, and they had no idea if it would work or not. The fascinating thing is, after the first year they did it, all the trucks sold out of food by 2:00 in the afternoon.
Wow. So
at that point, we knew there was a thing here to build on. In 2019, we had over 40,000 people and 70-something food trucks lined up and down Main Street and Capitol Avenue. And it's just amazing to see all that excitement and to feel all that excitement. So we tried to do things like that. And the unique part of that is there's a lot of food sold, but then we sell beer as well. So for the past several years, we've been able to take the money, the profits from the beer sales, and then we invest that into public art. We can talk more about that. But other events we do, we're officed in the old Main Street Mall, which actually used to be a mall,
right,
back in the 80s and 90s. And so we do a throwback retro party where a couple years ago I had to ask the head of building services if I could tear the doors off so I could drive a DeLorean inside the building. And I couldn't believe she let me do it, but we did, and we had a great time with that. Next Monday, on the 22nd, we're doing our tree lighting ceremony. So this is something we haven't had in Little Rock until about 5 years ago. We started getting a big Christmas tree at the corner of Capitol and Main, and now we have a lighting ceremony. So typically that brings a couple thousand people out, and we're looking forward to that. Then we do, I guess, for a couple years, we've done an event on the Arkansas River with our friends across the river in North Little Rock. So one of the amazing things about our community, about our city, is that we have a waterfront. We have a river that runs right in the middle of it, but I still maintain it's underutilized.
I agree.
So one of the things I do when I speak to people is I always ask, how many of you have been on the Arkansas River? How many of you seen downtown Little Rock or North Little Rock from the middle of the Arkansas River? And it's amazing the number of people who are lifelong Arkansans who have never done that for whatever reason, going back to, you'll get eaten by a big catfish or whatever it is. But we try to put an event together and bring people out there and do boat tours, and everybody has a blast. They want to do it again. So that's something we've had a lot of success with. And then we've started doing things over in the East Village area. We have an event called the East Village Jam, where the focus is music and food, and we bring people out, and it's the same formula as we do with the food truck festival, but just try to have a free event to get people to come out and enjoy a different area of Little Rock that they haven't necessarily seen.
Hit a little more on the public art you mentioned. I love some of the murals, some of what you've done that has really brightened up the neighborhood where I work.
So the one that I guess that I'm the most proud of was the first one we did, which was the big wagon that we have, and it's just really always puts a smile on my face watching the news. I think Channel 7 has it when they fade out each evening. It shows that mural in the background, that shot of downtown Little Rock. That was right there at the intersection of Capitol and Main. We took some of the profits from one of the food truck festivals, went to the property owner and said, hey, you have a great wall. You've got a great mural. We've got a little bit of money. Would you be willing to let us do this? And they were an amazing partner in this and said, not only are we willing to allow you to do this, we're going to kick in some money as well. And so we were very fortunate to work with Jason Jones, an Arkansas artist out of Northwest Arkansas, who's done a lot of amazing pieces. And he did that 5,000 square foot not so little red wagon.
Yeah, not so little. Yeah,
that we get to see, and it's got the different icons and landmarks in downtown Little Rock. So it's really fun, and I'm really proud of that, and I too always smile when I walk past it. But we've done a handful of them since then. Just recently over here on Scott Street, we did one that was community sourced. So we took a locally designed logo that said, downtown Little Rock, it belongs to everyone, it's everyone's neighborhood. And we worked with a local artist, Matt McLeod, and then invited local volunteers to come in, and they could take a shift, and it was really a paint by numbers thing. So, Rex, you do the blue, I do the green, but people had a lot of fun, and it's fun to see that show up on social media and see people continue to use that. So this year, one of the other surprises, if you will, was an area right next to the Donaghy building over on Main Street. I've walked past this area and saw this dirty alley, and it's kind of sitting between these two, the Donaghy building, which is empty, and a parking deck. So there's nothing sexy or cool about this. But like we've talked before, that's an opportunity. So started kicking around ideas. What could we do? So the parking deck had these panels that were naturally built as a part of the construction, and the concept came up of what if we made this like a mural wall where each artist got a section to do what they want. So that worked, but again, we needed money to pay for this. So we started, talking around, and I stumbled into had a donor who had given us money for something else, and then that wasn't going to work. So I had to call him, and I said, okay, I'm going to give this back because, what we initially thought we were going to do, can't do it. But before I do, hear me out. And they loved it. And this was our partners at Benny Key. So talking to our friend Rusty Mathis, and he was a little skeptical. He wanted to come look at the space, and then he kind of went along with the ride. But when we were done, he loves it. It's been amazing to see. So now we have lights that go across. We've got 10 different pieces of art. And then we had another donor come along that says, hey, we want to help. We don't want any credit for this, but here, go do something good. And we were able to use that money to install the fake grass that you see there. And that place, people are always using that to eat lunch and to participate. They'll use it and hold events there on the weekends or birthday parties. And that goes to a real concept in our industry called placemaking. And that's what we did, is we took a dirty, empty alley, added a little bit of lights, added some color, and then the fake grass, and now it's a place where people congregate and feel safe to go. So the more we can replicate that and take that concept and do more of those types of things in our downtown, I think the better off we're going to be.
Gabe, thank you. It's been fascinating. Gone quickly. We'll have you back in 2022.
I'd love to do it.
Thank you for joining us. That was Gabe Holmstrom, Executive Director of the Downtown Little Rock Partnership. I'm Rex Nelson. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Southern Pride Podcast, a production of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette.